the top that lets you know that the meeting has started.
Yep.
All right.
And I guess since you have the mic, Dominique, our first order of business is to go through our statement.
Okay. Get it in present mode. All right, so hello everyone, I'm Dominique Davis. I am the Director of District Implementation for the Core Division of the Department of Education, and I will be serving as your facilitator over these 5 meetings that you all have scheduled for your subcommittee work, and I look forward to working with each of you, and you should have my contact information from the calendar invite, but if you did not get that, it's dominique.davis@tn.gov. So anytime you need anything, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to assist. All right, so the Tennessee Department of Education is excited to work with you on this opportunity to discuss the state's formula for funding public education. Before we begin, the department would like to remind you of the following. Conversations on this topic are not intended to reflect on the current BEP funding formula. The current BEP funding formula will remain in place until a new funding formula is recommended to and approved by the Tennessee General Assembly. The public is encouraged to submit comments in writing to ensure that all communications are thoroughly documented and can be reviewed and considered in the future. Public comment is encouraged to focus on developing a new funding formula rather than revising the current funding formula. Consider what should be funded in a new funding formula and at what level. Subcommittees will be responsible for reviewing public comment and making recommendations for what should be included in a new funding formula. While all committees, subcommittees, and members of the public should feel free to communicate openly, documents and records may be subject to public inspection pursuant to the Tennessee Public Records Act and may be publicly posted or otherwise made available. All recommendations that are submitted by committees and subcommittees will be reviewed and considered, but not all recommendations will ultimately be included in the proposed new funding formula.
All right, thank you, Dominique. And so for the fun stuff, let's just give a quick overview of the agenda. So we've already done the welcome and call to order statement, and now we'll get into the real fun, the roll call and attendance. And so that means that really by way of introductions, for those of you who are quiet now, I guess, which is everyone but me, you'll get a chance to quickly introduce yourselves and we can learn a little bit about what we all do and what brings us to this committee. So Dominique, we can go to the next couple of slides. So we'll just ask you to introduce yourself by way of name, organization or community that you represent, one thing you're looking forward to, and then what you hope to contribute to the process and conversation. And so I'll lead by example. I guess we don't have too many people on, but we still want to keep this short-winded. And so I am Derwin Sisnet. I guess I should have led with that. I am the chair of this subcommittee, excited to be a part of this process. I represent Maslow Development, Inc. It's the organization that I co-founded and co-lead today. It's a network real estate development that's based in Memphis, and we do work all throughout. I also represent the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission as a commissioner. One thing I'm looking forward to in this process is really hearing from you all and from community members at large about what it means to invest more dollars in our kids. And what I'm hoping to contribute to the process and conversation, really by way of facilitator, is to just bring a lot of our wonderful ideas to a unified idea that we can share with the greater public. And so that's a little bit about me and what I'm hoping to get from this and share. And so we now have the list that you see of everyone that's part of this panel or this subcommittee. Everyone isn't present today, so we'll definitely skip around, but we'll go in the order of what we see listed here. So I guess you can find your name and see who's next.
Okay, I think I am next. I am Melanie Allen, and I am a parent of a 3rd and 5th grader in Knox County in East Tennessee. I also have 2 22-year-olds who went through the system and who actually attended school in a rural school system. I'm also representing, not officially, but I feel like I'm representing Head Start in the early education portion of our education system, as I'm on the education leadership team at Knoxville Head Start. And what were the other questions? I can't remember the other questions. I'm excited to just be a part of the conversation in this restructuring and reimagining funding for the Department of Education in Tennessee. And I hope to contribute some viewpoints coming from early childhood education, coming from Head Start, and looking at what we do with pre-K to third grade.
Thank you. Who's up next? I don't have everyone on my screen, I don't believe, but I don't think I see Dr. Bug or Ms. Carpenter. So feel free to jump in if you see yourself. I guess we could also scroll down just to make sure we get everyone, and then we could always come back up.
All right, this is Sherry Haze. I hate to jump in if somebody's ahead of me, but I'll go ahead and go. I'm Sherry Haze. I'm the founder and CEO of Noble Education Initiative. We currently work with several schools there in Nashville, and one of them is a commission school. And we do some work down in Memphis as well with multiple schools around teacher certification and licensure. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm looking forward to supporting the initiative of the governor and the Department of Ed as we reimagine and rethink funding in Tennessee. And I think it's a unique opportunity that we have a voice at the table. And as a committee, I'm really excited to think about the recommendations that we can make together to make sure that we're doing what's right for the children and students there in Tennessee. And then I hope to contribute. My organization currently works with schools in Tennessee. We work with schools in Georgia. We work with schools in Florida, Louisiana. And so we operate in states that have a student-based funding formula. And I'm really hoping that I can help drive the conversation around some of those categories, qualifiers, and really help all together that we can think about that student-based funding formula and bring in the early learning as well into the conversation. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Carroll Highfill. I'm a parent in Hamilton County, just outside of Chattanooga. I actually have 3 children of my own. One just graduated from high school last year. She's a freshman at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And then I have 2 still in the school system, one in high school and one in elementary school. I am also the president of Hamilton County Council of PTAs. Something I'm really looking forward to is just, again, same thing that's been said, being a part of this process as we really reimagine what we can do for kids when we switch the funding formula to a student weighted based formula, if that's what happens, and how we can provide services to kids where they're not always getting them right now by changing the funding formula. So I'm excited about that conversation, and I hope to contribute different viewpoints that maybe aren't being heard right now as we listen to all parents across our districts. I think there's definitely viewpoints and parent voice that's not always being heard. So I really hope to contribute that as we talk to parents and make sure that we're representing everyone.
Hi, I'm Dwight Hunter, president of Tennessee PTA, representing parents and families from Bristol to Memphis, from Chattanooga to Dyer County, entire state of parents and families. Really looking forward to working with people on this committee to help expand the voice of parents and families that often are not heard, as Christy had just mentioned. And so I hope to contribute to this committee by being in networking with parents and families across the state, that I can bring in their voices into this subcommittee as well, and what is important to them. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Marino. I'm not sure if Wendy's here. I don't want to jump ahead of her. So assuming she's not, again, Tom Marino from Memphis, Tennessee. I work with the Poplar Foundation. We're we're a foundation that works solely in Memphis on education initiatives, schools, and supports for schools. And very much looking forward to the conversation here, and hope maybe to ask some questions and maybe offer some insight that might be helpful. And certainly I look forward to learning from all of you. And I'm really looking forward to our chair, Derwin Sisnet, figuring this whole thing out and fixing the funding formula in Tennessee. So Derwin, good luck.
Nice try, Tom. This is going to be a group effort. Thank you. I think Dr. Stewart, you might be up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonya Stewart. I am a community superintendent for the Midtown Learning Community in Hamilton County Schools. I am looking forward to hearing the multitude of voices weigh in on this really important topic and really push for reform and reimagine how we do this. What I contribute, I think a couple of things. I have led a school where we had student-based budgeting, so I can speak from that perspective and the impact it had there. I've been in districts that have been connected to student-based budgeting as well, so I kind of bring that central office perspective. And most of my work has been serving kind of an urban core schools, and so I think I can also elevate the voice of parents with kids kind of in some situations that we definitely need to be differentiating resources for. So nice to meet you all.
Well, I thought I'd seen Blair, but I don't see her at this moment.
Blair's here.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I was waiting. It looked like we had a couple ahead of us, but I am Blair Taylor, and I'm glad to be here with everybody today. I am the CEO of Tennesseans for Quality Early Education, and for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, we're a statewide coalition, a nonpartisan statewide coalition of advocates for Tennessee's youngest and littlest learners. And so we are, I'm from Memphis, live in Memphis, and know Derwin and Tom and from wearing some of my other hats in Memphis, where I represent the business community and local efforts there. I am most looking forward to this opportunity for sort of blue sky thinking on how we can use our state funding formula to really close opportunity gaps for students, and particularly with an interest in our youngest learners through third grade, pre-K to third grade. And I'm also, I think what can I contribute? Certainly some of what I think I can contribute is the perspective of Tennessee voters. We do an annual voter survey every year on early education proposals, sort of birth through third grade, and lots of enthusiasm in our state across party lines for an agenda that supports early education, better supports early education and learning. Also, we do some surveying of parents across the state, and so I'm eager to sort of make sure and be a part of supporting the parent voice being heard and shaping this work.
Is Kevin Tennant here before I go? I don't
think so, Josh. I think you're up.
Okay. Well, I'm Josh Thomas. I'm the advocacy director for the Foundation for Excellence in Education, better known as Excel in Ed. I'm their advocacy director for the Southeast United States. We're a national policy and advocacy organization that was founded by former Governor Jeb Bush when he left office to work on a myriad of education policies. While we're a national organization, I was born and lived most of my life and grew up in Memphis, and my wife and I now live in Nashville with our daughter. And so I'm excited to hear from from all the different stakeholders and the different points of view on this really important topic. And then I think one of the things that I'd like to help provide is some of the national perspective, what other states who have considered this, where we've seen successes, where we still see challenges, and to give some of some larger kind of national approaches on this subject, but tempered with the perspective of a lifelong Tennessean and someone who knows our state, just having lived here. So thanks.
Okay, I think I'm up next. Hi, Jennings Wilson, and I am in Weakley County, in Tennessee. I am 30. I was born to be part of this stuff, and my kids are young, third grade, first grade, and 4. So I'm looking forward to how we think opportunities for them and their peers and every student across Tennessee. I can provide some insight. I'm Northwest Tennessee, and I hope I can provide some insight about the unique challenges that rural communities and rural school districts face.
Is April Garza right here before I jump in? Nope. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Berthina Nabah McKinney. I am the founder and CEO of Nabah Consulting, which is an education and management consulting firm specializing in school improvement and turnaround work for schools and districts across the nation. I am also a parent of a 3rd grader in Metro Nashville public schools. And I've also had 5 children who've also matriculated through Metro Nashville public schools. I'm a former educator, former principal, worked at the district level, and also served a stint on the school board. So I come with a wealth of knowledge in both public, private, and charter sectors, and would love to contribute that knowledge to this conversation, as well as currently serving on the Parent Advisory Council here in Metro Nashville, Davidson County, and lending the voices of parents across our district. And so look forward to joining this conversation and being a part of how we best serve students, all students, from an equity lens. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to give an opportunity for anyone that we might have missed to introduce themselves. I think we had almost everyone covered. And we have some folks that are joining by phone or that aren't on video, so just want to make sure. All right, going once, going twice. All right, we'll move on and give you all another chance to introduce yourselves if join later. With that, now that we all have heard from everyone, at some point I would like to make sure we have a vice chair for the committee, for the subcommittee. And so if that's something you're interested in, just let that percolate. And I'll come back to that later in this meeting. And in the role of the vice chair, we just want to make sure that in case of my absence, that someone will be able to lead the meeting, and that this will continue and not just be dependent on one person. So just think about that, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So just want to give just a lens of this committee and just a brief discussion on this, and I'll just read through this, and then we'll have an opportunity to really discuss some of our thoughts around how we want to see or where we want to see this committee go. And so this committee is intended to focus primarily on the specific and unique goals and needs of the student group represented by the committee, such as students in urban, suburban, rural communities, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, et cetera, and or the goals and specific supports needed for students to be successful in specific areas represented by the committee, such as post-secondary readiness, and or the needs of all learners along with specific student groups based on the experiences and expertise of practitioners who work with students every day, such as the teacher advisory, student engagement, and district leadership committees. And this does not preclude the committee from considering other viewpoints, perspectives, or considerations. And so hopefully you all have had a chance just by way of email to review some of the slides, the ones that I'm going through now. And so after reviewing the introduction slides, are there any questions about the process from you all? Are there any additional materials or resources that will be helpful for you as a committee member? And then also, what additional information do you want or need to maximize you and your community's voice in this process? And this is just an open discussion about these 3 prompts here. And the key is to make sure that you all have what you need in order to feel as if we could be successful as a subcommittee to move this, to advance this work.
I do have one question. How are we eliciting voices of parents across the state?
So there are, I'm not sure if any of you have been made aware of, hopefully you have, if not, let us know, we'll make sure that you that information goes out, but we are hosting town halls across the state. There was one in Memphis a couple of weeks ago. That might have been the second town hall meeting, if correct. And there will be town hall meetings throughout the next couple of months. And so that's one way to, that is open to the public to elicit parent voice, and public feedback, not just parent voice, but public feedback. And so when you hear of these town halls, and again, if you haven't heard of them, we can send out another email. So just, you can even email me directly or email Dominique, so we can get that information to you, because it will be important for you and for us as committee members to pass that information along. And so imagine us as somewhat of a conduit to parents and representative of their voice. And so we definitely don't want to be the voice for all parents. And so the more we can pass this information along and have more parents present, the better. And so that is one way, by virtue of the town hall. The other way, or by virtue of who we are, and the access that we as individuals of the subcommittee have to parents, whether it's by the schools that we operate or are part of, whether it's a network of charter schools or district schools or what have you. The access that we have to parents is another way for us to elicit parent feedback.
I would also like to add, Derwin, if you have people, as you all go out and you are talking to people and they want some of their feedback put in writing, they can send it to tnedu.funding@tn.gov. And at the end of this presentation, I'll stick that in the chat, or I'll try to do it maybe from my phone. I can't do it since I'm sharing my screen, but that is another way that voices can be heard. They can send anything that they want, and you can make sure that you share that email address widely.
I would only add that they also videoed all of those town halls, and they're very simple to go in and find. So if you want to look at any of that, they were really easy to go in and look at the recordings, and they're listed out by each meeting.
I'm glad you shared that, because it's also why we're recording this. A lot of times, I know I've done a lot of work in community engagement, and I've worked in schools, and a lot of times the issue around giving people access is we're giving people access and not meeting them where they are. And so sometimes, and even a time like now, parents might not have access or be able to leave their desks to join a meeting like this. And so we want to still be able to provide them with the information that's going out, the topics that we're discussing. And that way, if they do have feedback, we are an open book and we are an open forum, and they could give that feedback to us, and we can ensure that that information is being passed along and discussed in subsequent meetings. Are there any other questions about the process, about the information we've received thus far? Any additional materials that you would like to see? I know we've talked about, weighted form. We're getting into the discussion of weighted formulas and what have you, and some of that information or materials have been sent out. But that could be new information for some. For instance, if that's something that you would like to learn more about, we could provide more information around that, particularly as we talk about the different types of funding that we could implement. So just throwing those out as ideas in terms of questions that we might have. Okay, well, this is an easy group, or everyone's just ready for lunch. So we can move on to the next slide.
I'm having technical difficulty. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
It's not letting me progress the slides. So let me reshare and see if it'll.
And there we go. Perfect. And so this would be great to spend a little bit more time on. What do we hope to be true for students in Tennessee? So imagine this as our vision conversation, and in what resources are needed to support the students or perspectives that we represent. Maybe we could start with the first one. Would love to get you all's thoughts on what do we hope to be true for students in Tennessee?
So this is Melanie Allen from Knox County. And so some of the things that I just jotted down really quickly, and again, these are lofty blue sky. I think somebody used the term blue sky kind of dreams for children and students in Tennessee. Is I would love for them to all have a strong social and emotional foundation so they are ready to learn. I would love for all and emotionally in schools. I would like for us to work towards children just being prepared for not only to be successful in school, but also in life. And then I also would love, speaking particularly to the early childhood sector and the pre-K to 3, I would love for us to work to make those grades more developmentally appropriate with the research that we have on brain science and how young children learn.
Thank you. It's pretty thorough, just jotting down.
I had another meeting right before this, so I thought, oh, I've got to, yeah. So I was just kind of jotting down some thoughts.
Oh, thank you. Really, really appreciate that. What else do we hope to be true for students in Tennessee?
I'll jump in here. I think that honestly, the statement, it sounds very simplistic, but it's very complex on the back end, is that we as a state are providing whatever is necessary for our students to be successful, however they define success, right? So success is going to be defined very differently by different kids all across our state. And I think that we need to be providing the appropriate pathways for every student. Not every student is going to college. Not every student, is going to have a trade. We need to find out whatever it is these kids need to be successful, whether it's particular services that they're not receiving now, or maybe they are. Anything that we need to be throwing everything at these kids that we can to make sure that their version of success is achievable for them. And that's what I want to see for students in Tennessee.
I love that. That's helpful for this topic, because it's to your point, oftentimes we can prescribe one model of success, and then we work, in this case, we'd be working towards funding that single model of success, and we'd be missing out on opportunities that for success for students that look differently from what we are used to. And this is helpful to lift this idea up, because we can then start to think about where we want to point dollars that address the myriad of options of success for students. Thank you for that.
To add on to that, I would say that we want to ensure that every student, no matter who they are or where they live, have access to high quality education, and they have access to the resources they need to be successful, and at their level of success. And I think that goes into what was just said related to that their level of success, whether that is a student with disabilities, whether that is English language learner, whether there is social emotional support that's needed, whether there is support that's needed to address poverty and wraparound services. We need to make sure that we are meeting students where they are to eliminate the barriers that allow them the opportunities to live, to survive and thrive in a great learning environment for them.
Thank you for that. It's really helpful.
Hey, Derwin, I'd echo a lot of what's been said already. Just add my 2 cents and reiteration of, I think we all of us on this call want our children to have what they need to reach their potential and thrive. And the school systems, our schools, are such a unique resource where so many of our children's needs and frankly the needs of their families could be served if we use a lot of the creative and evidence-based models that we know abound. And I think, just to say that, our state is making investments, rightly so, really enthused about through the Tennessee Literacy Act. A lot of the investments that have been made recently through the leadership of our governor and our Department of Education and legislature, like after school, mini camps and summer learning camps and tutoring, the all-core tutoring initiative for high dosage tutoring. And we also know that there are a lot of things, for example, the healthcare and mental health care, school nurses and mental health counselors that are consistently recommended by our BEP review committee every single year, made it to the top of the list this year. And we hear a lot from teachers about the urgent, need for mental health supports for students. Really would like to see our schools do a better job of meeting best practice ratios or figuring out better strategies for getting supports for students and their families. So those and back to early learning, just the importance of investment in early learning is just very well documented, high quality early learning. And so certainly our voter surveys show consistently every year that Tennessee voters want to see publicly funded pre-K available for any child whose parents want them to attend. And that is not anywhere near the case at this time.
Yeah, I would echo what everyone has already said, but I would get really granular and say a great teacher in every classroom for every student in every school. And what does that really mean in terms of attracting talent, retaining talent, and then training talent so that our students are getting the best of the best? So how do we really think about that? And then it goes into all the other pieces around career and technical education, and how do we really focus up against some of those programs and supports that we know our kids and families need, and how do we really fund those and make those relevant to the outcomes that our students deserve on a regular basis. So I would just add a great teacher in every classroom and then parcel that out.
Hear, hear. I don't think you'll get any disagreement from anyone on this call, really, for anything that's just been said. So it's great to see alignment. I mean, honestly, though, would love to see if there's anything that is quote unquote disruptive in terms of what we want to be true for students that might not be popular. We definitely don't want to ascribe to just one idea. And while we might all agree right now with what we're talking about, that doesn't mean we'll always agree. And so what are some things that might be different or that might be true in one side of the state, on one side of the state and not for another, that we should be talking about as well?
And I would only add, since we're the Choice and Voice Subcommittee, that we give choices and voice to our students and families. And I think expanding upon those choices for kids and really allowing families to make those decisions based on the needs of the students. Again, unsung, unsaid, but we are the Choice and Voice Subcommittee. And sometimes that's not popular.
I would also say add that so I'm in an urban school district, and we're the second largest, and sometimes we paint a school district with a broad stroke instead of really looking at the nuances that happen within our district. And so from one cluster to another, from one high school cluster to another high school cluster, you have a variance in demographics and the needs of students within those clusters. And I think if we're really looking granular at how we're supporting students, we really need to look at what individual families are needing and what individual students are needing to provide that support for their students at every level. And sometimes we're not having those conversations. We're using broad paint strokes instead of really getting granular to support the educational needs of kids.
I like that. And along those lines, I'll contribute to what could be a controversial thought, maybe not. But to me, what's always been important I know we talk a lot about wraparound services, and oftentimes we don't really address wraparound infrastructure and how important that is. And so we sort of, we just have this belief that if great things are happening in the classroom, then we don't have to worry about the physical structure of the classroom or the school building or the neighborhood around the school building. And so, I know from personal experience and from students that I've served over the years that, come 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're thinking about going home and what does home look like? And so how can we ensure that we're also pointing dollars to students that address the wraparound infrastructure that supports the work that we want to do in classrooms for them anyway?
I think to add to that, how are we removing those barriers as students walk in the door? And so what type of support are we giving students and in many cases families to remove those barriers so that learning can take place in the first place? And I think we're finding so much that we're addressing that within our school systems, that our community, which is our city and oftentimes our state, are not working as in tangent to support those needs. And they need to look at it from that framework.
Any other thoughts? We have about 20 minutes before we'll wrap. A couple more things to discuss, but I want to make sure that we give enough time to this topic.
I'll throw one more in there, and it's back to a little bit more broad, but I think a lot of our kids are missing arts instruction in school, depending on, I mean, any kind of arts instruction. And it's very unfortunate. And as we go through this funding formula, it is a concern that I have, and I want to make sure that that's being addressed as we go through funding. Every child should have access to quality arts programs sometime during their education. And if we're not providing that, we are failing these kids in a way. A lot of these kids are, I mean, that's what they're going to be drawn to. That's what brings some kids into school. That's what gets them passionate. So I hope that somewhere in here, there is, a way that we are ensuring that every kid has access to quality arts programs as well.
I don't want you to take my silence as a disagreement to that. Totally agree, 100%. I believe in the arts. I myself am an artist, and I think art has been important in my life. Creative writing, poetry, photography, since I was in elementary school all the way through graduate school. And so I think it's really, really important, and we oftentimes dismiss it as a nice to have. And funny enough, for school communities that have enough capital, it is embedded in the program. And it's not a nice to have, it is a must have. And so I think all students should have access to that. If it's a must have in some places, it should be a must have for all places.
So if we're looking for controversial.
Yes, we are. Let's go for it.
One of the things that we often miss is funding, is ensuring that we have enough funding and resources for our EL population, particularly our undocumented students. They are still in our schools and our school systems, and we are not providing adequate funding to support them. And so that is a conversation that we need to have related to this new funding model and how it supports every single student that enters our school system, period.
I'm glad you said that. A lot of times there are taglines that, we want blank, blank, blank for all students. And you're right, all students mean all students. If they're in our doors, they are our students. If they're in our state, they are our students. And I appreciate you saying that.
Can I hit another controversial statement? Sorry.
I was going to say, before you do, since that first one could be controversial, would love to get reactions to that. And again, we could disagree, and I'm sure there will be things that people will say that I will disagree with, and maybe this is a good time for me to say, just because I am chair of this subcommittee does not mean that I am the owner of this conversation. And so just because I disagree doesn't mean it won't get put out into the public. And again, this is being recorded. We want to make sure everyone has access and that we all have a voice here. So I just want to state that for the record. But if you feel free to share that, unless someone wants to react to the first thing that you shared.
I was just going to say I would give you like 2 thumbs up and some silent claps, because I think that is excellent. I think it's excellent and often overlooked. So especially with our undocumented students. So bravo.
Well, you're on a roll, so I guess we'll just go for the next controversial statement.
So sorry. The other challenge that I often see is not enough funding being directed to our low socioeconomic communities that have more challenges than are expected or that are thought of in those communities. So really ensuring that we look at our funding from an equity lens instead of an equality lens. I think that is a big difference in how we're looking at it. Really distributing funds to the communities that need it the most. In some cases, that can be rural communities. In some cases, that is low socioeconomic. Also, our Black and Brown communities are needing resources. So how are we truly looking at it from an equity lens instead of an equality lens? And making sure that we know the difference between the two.
I'm really glad you shared that. I think I spent a lot of time in urban communities and doing work as a school operator, as a charter school operator, as a builder, and I grew up in an urban community. And it wasn't until I spent more time across the state and across the country and rural communities to see that rural communities are overlooked as much as urban communities in many cases when it comes to funding and equitable funding. And we oftentimes just focus on, the critical masses and not the smaller groups or smaller populations that oftentimes are overlooked. And so I'm glad you shared that.
Well, Derwin, since we're just tossing things out at this point that are incredibly important, and I love what's being said, I wonder, especially at this point and where we are with test scores and achievement, at least certainly in Shelby County, wonder why there's not more conversation about a more balanced calendar, maybe more days in school and spread more evenly throughout the year.
We should be having that conversation and in finding ways from a funding standpoint to support that. I remember doing the math. This was over a decade ago around what it would mean to have. I think I started a school back in 2008, and I remember thinking if we just add 5 more school days or 10 more school days in the year, what that meant in terms of the amount of hours over the course of our students, life between elementary school through high school, and how much more time in the classroom and time with their teachers they would have. And it was just incredible. And so it really would be good for us to find ways to support that. And, a lot of times funding gets in the way of making that happen.
I think this is the last controversial statement that I'll have, and it may not be controversial. Everyone may agree on this. But regardless of if we're looking at the old funding formula or creating a new funding formula, funding it is important. We need to ensure that the state is truly going to fund it at capacity. And give our students and our school districts and our systems the funding that they need to establish high quality education and what students deserve. So I would hope that we go from 44th to number 1 in education funding.
That would be nice. I can't make any promises on behalf of the governor or the commissioner, but I would not. I would not. Yeah, I don't think they would be putting this together and all of these subcommittees together if their intent wasn't to improve funding for our students. And I think the first step is improvement, and I think the improvement will hopefully be significant. Yeah, especially as we compare to other states and knowing the amounts of money that are going to students and how it's going to students, it's high time we revisit this.
And this might not, I hope it's not controversial, but I also think that we should be talking about our SPED students and the resources they need. And sometimes there's additional support that's required there. And thinking about what that looks like in this funding formula, I think is extremely important as well.
I echo that, and I know some of my colleagues, Tom and others on this call. I know just even in Memphis alone, that was a big discussion, and still is a discussion that really was uncovered, particularly around the turnaround school space, and just the recognition that there are a lot of students who aren't getting the services that they need because the funding just isn't there, and so it's definitely something we need to address. Okay, so I'll never be accused of dragging out a conversation. At least I hope I'm never accused of dragging out a conversation. So we can move on from this. And of course, if there's anything else, if there's something that was unsaid, we all have each other's email, and we can definitely share that or hold it for the next subcommittee meeting. Just moving forward to the next slide, we'll just talk about just essentially next steps. And so just a bit of a preview: at the next meeting, members will receive their first batch of content for review. We hope to get it to you, I'll put that in air quotes, 1 week in advance. And when you do get it, members should review that content in addition to the feedback they've individually collected. And if possible, please also submit collected materials for the full group to consider. In terms of deliverables, in reviewing the materials, members will need to categorize the feedback and resource ideas into one of 4 groups and be prepared to discuss the recommendation as must have, should have, nice to have, and other. And then over the next 2 weeks, how does the subcommittee want to solicit or collect feedback to answer these questions? What's the preference for the group? Would we want to do this via email or some other method of communication in terms of gathering this feedback? I'll just throw out email unless there's someone has another method that they would prefer. All right, hearing no disagreement, seeing some thumbs up and some semi-frowns, we'll move on from that. And so before we get into the next meeting details, would anyone love to volunteer to be the vice chair? Someone that knows that they'll be in attendance in all the meetings that we have coming up, just in case there's a meeting that I can't attend. I see one person raise their hand, Dr. Naba. Am I pronouncing that right, Dr. Naba McKinney?
Yes.
Anyone, we can have a standoff here if anyone wants to also be vice chair. All right, seeing no disagreement or no one else raising their hand, we'll confirm you as vice chair of this subcommittee, Dr. Naba McKinney. Thank you for volunteering. In terms of next meeting details, it'll be November 23rd at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and it'll be online via the same platform that we're on now, WebEx. And so in terms of the topic, we'll discuss feedback and categorize that into the feedback and the priorities. Any questions before I close this out? All right, seeing as there are none, I'll give you all 6 minutes of your time back. Thank you so much for productive discussion. I'm happy to have met you all and to reconnect with some of you that I already know, and looking forward to the next meeting later this month. You all have a great rest of your week. Bye. And thank you, Dominique.
Thank you. If you need anything, let me know.
All right, thanks. Bye.